Mr. President, few Americans have helped this great country reach for the stars more than General Chuck Yeager. Long before there were astronauts, there was Chuck Yeager, a fearless test pilot, a true aviation pioneer, paving the way for America's exploration of the galaxy. But Chuck Yeager's military career involved so much more than just testing cutting-edge aircraft. And, as almost everyone knows, becoming the first man to fly faster than the speed of sound. Few Americans have been as unwavering and as relentless as Chuck Yeager in the defense of this great country in war and peace, from World War II to Vietnam. He was part of the greatest generation of Americans, the generation that fought and won World War II, and then came home and made America the world's greatest superpower. And among the greatest in that generation was Chuck Yeager. Mr. President, today is Chuck's 90th birthday, and I invite the entire Senate to join me in congratulating him. I'm so proud of this man. Not only is he a native son of West Virginia, but he is also a dear friend of mine. Chuck lives in California now with his wife, Victoria, but he still comes to West Virginia to hunt with me and roam the hills where he grew up. He also visits the state from time to time to promote the foundation which bears his name and which supports a scholarship program at Marshall University. When I was a governor, Chuck and Victoria would sometimes visit Gail and me in the governor's mansion. Now, some of you know that I'm a pilot, and during one of Chuck's visits to West Virginia, I got him to join me on a flight. We were trying out a new airplane for the state, and it was a real honor, but it was a little bit daunting, if you will, that I'm flying left seat and Chuck's right behind me, evaluating the entire flight. Looking over my shoulder, having the greatest pilot that ever lived was something that I will never forget. Some of the story of Chuck's life you probably know, and some of it you may not. Chuck grew up in the small town of Hamlin. That's in Lincoln County, West Virginia, so deep in an Appalachian holler that folks there used to say you had to pump in the sunshine. His father, Albert Howe, worked as a driller in the gas fields. His mother, Susie May, took care of Chuck, his two brothers and his two sisters. Chuck and his father went hunting and fishing together. Chuck also worked with his father in the oil fields. He was fascinated by the drilling equipment. He also liked cars. He liked real fast cars. And he especially liked his old man's Chevy truck. He not only drove it, he studied all its mechanical details, and he could basically take it apart and rebuild it. So looking back, it's not surprising that in the middle of World War II, a patriotic kid from West Virginia, good with rifles, mechanical equipment, and fast cars, enlisted in the United States Air Force as an airplane mechanic. His first step toward becoming the single greatest pilot that has ever lived. As a mechanic, he started out. A new flying sergeant's program eventually gave him his first chance to fly. Up until that time, it was officers only. But his first couple of training flights didn't go so well. Some people might not know this. He had to overcome air sickness. Can you believe Chuck Yeager getting air sick? But before long, he found a new home in the sky, in the cockpit of an airplane. Mr. President, during World War II, Chuck flew numerous combat missions over Europe and shot down 13 enemy aircraft, 5 in one mission. He was shot down over German-occupied France in 1944, but escaped capture to fly another day. But first he had to argue his case against being sent home under a no more combat rule. The rule was basically when you were shot down, they couldn't let you go back in case you were captured. You could tell who your captors were, the people who saved you were. He pushed his way up the whole chain of command, all the way to the Supreme Allied Commander, General Dwight D. Eisenhower. He took his case right to the Supreme Allied Commander. Ike ultimately granted Chuck's request to stay with his men. After the war, Chuck became a test pilot. On October 14th, 1947, he did what no man had done before. He broke the sound barrier in the experimental X-1 plane named the Glamorous Glennis after his late wife. His fabled flight on the orange X-1 ushered in a new era of aviation that prepared America for its greatest leap into space. And so began the legend of Chuck Yeager. There were other pilots. Author Tom Wolfe wrote in The Right Stuff, a movie that most of us have seen. If you haven't, I suggest you do. With enough pilot ego to believe that they were actually better than this drawling hot dog. Chuck had a way with words if you ever have a chance to speak with him. But no one could contest the fact that as of that time, the 1950s era, Chuck Yeager was at the top of the pyramid, #1 among all the true brothers. Throughout his long military career, General Yeager flew more than 10,000 hours in more than 330 models of aircraft. In 1966, he even flew 127 missions in South Vietnam. He received numerous awards, including the Distinguished Service Medal, the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the Special Peacetime Medal of Honor. He was the youngest military pilot to be inducted into the Aviation Hall of Fame in 1973. Chuck officially retired from the Air Force in 1975, but maintained his status as a test pilot for another 3 decades, occasionally flying for the Air Force and NASA as a consultant. In 1997, on the 50th anniversary of his historic flight breaking the sound barrier, he flew past Mach 1 again, and an F-15D Eagle named the glamorous Glennis 3. It was his last official flight with the Air Force. But of course, nothing stops Chuck Yeager. So last October, on the 65th anniversary of breaking the sound barrier, he did it again in another aircraft at the age of 89. Whenever he's asked about all of his exploits, Chuck says he was just doing his job, and that all he is, he owes to the Air Force. He's never, ever wavered from that. In his autobiography, he wrote this: "My beginnings back in West Virginia tell who I am to this day. My accomplishments as a pilot tell more about luck, happenstance, and a person's destiny. But the guy who broke the sound barrier was the kid who swam the mud river with a swiped watermelon or shot the head off a squirrel before school." Tom Wolfe believed Chuck Yeager to be the most righteous of all possessors of the right stuff. The right stuff, Wolfe himself struggled to explain what he meant by it. His best explanation was that the right stuff is that rare, almost indefinable mix of bravery, heroism, hard work, and focus that someone brings to a cause that means something to a people, to a nation, to humanity, to God. Mr. President, that describes General Chuck Yeager as well as anything else that I know. He is a man of extraordinary skill and legendary courage, and he has an unparalleled sense of duty and service to his country, risking his life over and over again. He is a great West Virginian. He is a great American. And on his 90th birthday, he still is, without a doubt, a man with the right stuff. I wish my dear friend the happiest of birthdays, and Mr. President, I urge every senator to join me in saluting General Chuck Yeager for his long and courageous service to this great country. Thank you, General Yeager.